Imagine racing against time in a place where time bends to the will of a dark force. Tonight, Emma and Adam must navigate the twisted, ever-changing halls of Westbrook High to reach the heart of its power. But as the final bell tolls, they'll discover that the school has one last trick up its sleeve. Welcome back to Nightmare for Giggles, where the end is just the beginning of the ultimate nightmare. I am the Tales Keeper, guiding you through the penultimate chapter of horror high school nightmare stories. Tonight, Emma and Adam face their greatest challenge yet as they race against time to reach the heart of Westbrook High's dark power. The school's walls have warped into a nightmarish maze, and with every step, the danger grows. Will they reach the source before the final bell rings, or will they be trapped forever in the school's twisted reality? Put on your headphones, close your eyes, and brace yourself for a journey through the darkest corners of Westbrook High. Because tonight, the final bell tolls for them all. The air in Westbrook High was thick with tension as Emma and Adam moved through the darkened hallways. The school was alive with an eerie energy, the walls seeming to pulse and breathe as they pressed forward. The destruction of the box had weakened the school's hold, but it was far from broken. The dark force that had been awakened by the principal's ritual was still very much alive, and it was growing stronger by the minute. "Are you sure we're going the right way?" Adam asked, his voice filled with unease as they navigated the twisting corridors. Emma nodded, though doubt gnawed at her insides. "We have to be. The final bell is our only chance. We need to reach the heart of the school's power and destroy it before it's too late." But as they turned another corner, they found themselves in a hallway that shouldn't have existed. The walls were covered in the same eerie, glowing symbols they had seen throughout the school. But the layout was completely unfamiliar. It was as if the school itself were shifting, changing the path to confuse them. "It's like the school is trying to trap us," Adam muttered, his eyes scanning the corridor for any sign of danger. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the truth. It is. The school knows we're getting close. It's trying to keep us away from the source. They continued down the hallway, their footsteps echoing unnervingly in the silence. The lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and twist with every step they took. The air grew colder, the atmosphere more oppressive, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As they reached the end of the corridor, they found themselves standing in front of a pair of large, ornate doors. The wood was dark and polished, the surface carved with intricate designs that seemed to shift and move under their gaze. "This must be it," Adam said, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma nodded, her hands trembling as she reached for the door handle. The metal was cold to the touch, and as she turned it, the doors creaked open, revealing a vast, empty room beyond. The room was dark, the only light coming from a large, circular window at the far end. The floor was covered in a thick layer of dust, and the walls were lined with old, faded portraits of former principals and teachers. But it wasn't the portraits that caught Emma's attention. It was the large, ornate clock that hung on the wall above the window. The hands were frozen in place, the time set to midnight. But Emma could feel the power emanating from it, filling the room with a sense of dread. "This is it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The source of the school's power." Adam's eyes widened as he took in the scene. The clock. It's connected to the final bell. If we can stop it, maybe we can break the school's hold for good. Emma nodded, though fear gnawed at her insides. The clock was massive, its presence overwhelming, and she knew that destroying it would be no easy task. But they had come too far to turn back now. "We need to destroy it," she said, her voice filled with determination. "It's the only way to end this." They approached the clock cautiously, the air growing colder with each step. The hands of the clock remained frozen at midnight, but Emma could feel the energy pulsing from it, filling the room with a dark, malevolent force. As they reached the base of the clock, Emma noticed something strange, a small, silver key resting on the floor. The metal was tarnished and worn, but it seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. "Adam, look at this," she said, picking up the key. Adam's eyes widened as he saw it. "Do you think it's the key to the clock?" Emma nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "It has to be. We need to use it to stop the clock." With trembling hands, Emma inserted the key into a small keyhole at the base of the clock. The metal clicked as it turned, and the clock hands began to move, ticking forward with a deafening sound that echoed through the room. But as the hands moved closer to midnight, the air in the room grew colder, the energy pulsing from the clock growing stronger. The walls trembled, the portraits on the walls shifting as if they were alive, and Emma could feel the dark force pressing in around them, trying to stop them. "Emma, hurry!" Adam shouted, his voice filled with urgency. Emma gritted her teeth, her hands shaking as she turned the key. The clock hands ticked forward, inching closer and closer to midnight, but the resistance grew stronger, the dark force fighting back with all its might. And then, just as the hands reached midnight, the room was filled with a blinding light. The clock's chimes rang out, the sound deafening as the energy from the clock exploded outward, filling the room with a surge of dark power. Emma cried out in pain as the force of the explosion knocked her to the ground, the key slipping from her grasp. The room trembled violently, the walls cracking as the portraits on the walls shattered, their glass frames falling to the floor. "Emma!" Adam's voice was filled with panic as he rushed to her side. Emma struggled to sit up, her vision blurry as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. The clock was still chiming, its hands now spinning wildly, and the air was thick with dark energy, pressing down on them like a physical weight. We have to stop it," Emma gasped, her voice trembling. Adam nodded, his face pale as he reached for the key. But as he grabbed it, the ground beneath them gave way, and they were plunged into darkness. When Emma opened her eyes, she found herself standing in a place that defied all logic. The floor was a shifting, swirling mass of shadows, the walls twisting and warping around her. The clock was nowhere to be seen, but its chimes echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. "Emma, where are we?" Adam's voice was filled with fear as he looked around the nightmarish landscape. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the truth. We're inside the clock. It's trying to trap us in its own twisted reality. The shadows around them seemed to pulse with energy, their forms shifting and changing as they moved closer. The air was thick with tension, the darkness pressing in on them from all sides. "We have to find a way out," Adam said, his voice filled with determination. "We have to stop the clock before it traps us here forever." Emma nodded, though fear gnawed at her insides. The clock's chimes were growing louder, the sound reverberating through the twisted landscape. The darkness seemed to close in around them, the shadows reaching out with grasping hands. "We need to find the heart of the clock," Emma said, her voice trembling. "If we can destroy it, maybe we can break free." They began to move through the nightmarish landscape, the shadows swirling around them like a living entity. The ground beneath them shifted and cracked, the air growing colder with each step. As they moved deeper into the darkness, the chimes grew louder, more frantic, as if the clock were trying to force them out. The shadows pressed in around them, their forms growing more solid, more menacing. But Emma refused to give up. She focused on the chimes, using the sound to guide her through the darkness. The clock's power was immense, but she knew that they had to find the source if they were going to escape. And then, just as they were about to lose hope, they saw it, a faint pulsing light in the distance, barely visible through the swirling shadows. "That has to be it," Emma said, her voice filled with determination. They moved toward the light, the shadows growing thicker, more oppressive. The chimes were deafening now, the sound filling the air with a sense of urgency, of impending doom. As they reached the light, they found themselves standing in front of a massive, ornate clock face, its hands spinning wildly. The heart of the clock was a pulsing, glowing orb, its surface covered in the same eerie symbols that had haunted them throughout their journey. "This is it," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "The heart of the clock. If we destroy it, we can break the school's power." Adam nodded, his face filled with determination. "Let's do it." They reached for the orb, their hands trembling as they touched its surface. The energy pulsed through them, the dark force within the clock fighting back with all its might. But they held on, their voices steady, as they recited the incantation that would destroy the heart of the clock. The air crackled with energy, the shadows around them recoiling as the power of the incantation took hold. The orb began to crack, the light within it growing brighter, more intense. The chimes of the clock reached a fever pitch, the sound reverberating through the twisted landscape. And then, with a final, deafening crack, the orb shattered, the light exploding outward and filling the nightmarish landscape with a blinding light. Emma and Adam were thrown back, the force of the explosion knocking them off their feet. The shadows around them disintegrated, the darkness giving way to a blinding white light. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. And then, slowly, the light began to fade, and Emma found herself lying on the floor of the principal's office, the shattered remains of the clock scattered around her. "Emma, are you okay?" Adam's voice was filled with concern as he knelt beside her. Emma struggled to sit up, her body aching from the force of the explosion. "I think so, but is it over?" Adam looked around the room, his expression filled with disbelief. The air was still and calm, the dark energy that had filled the room dissipating like smoke. "I think we did it," he said, his voice filled with relief. "The clock is destroyed." As they looked around the room, the oppressive atmosphere that had clung to the school was gone. The dark power that had controlled Westbrook High for so long had been broken, and the school was finally at peace. But even as relief washed over them, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The clock was destroyed, but the final bell had not yet rung. "We need to leave," Emma said, her voice trembling. "We need to get out of here before the final bell." Adam nodded, his expression filled with concern. "But where do we go? What if the school is still—" Before he could finish his sentence, the ground beneath them began to shake, the walls of the school trembling violently. The air was filled with the sound of creaking wood and cracking stone, as if the entire building were collapsing in on itself. "We have to move!" Emma shouted, grabbing Adam's arm and pulling him toward the door. They raced through the hallways, the ground shaking beneath their feet. The walls cracked and crumbled around them, the ceiling caving in as the school began to collapse. As they reached the front doors, the final bell rang out, its sound reverberating through the collapsing building. The air was thick with dust and debris, the school's final moments playing out in a cacophony of destruction. But they didn't stop. They burst through the front doors, the cold night air hitting them like a slap to the face. The school behind them groaned and creaked, the walls collapsing as the building was consumed by the dark power it had held for so long. They ran until they could run no more, finally collapsing on the grass outside the school grounds. The final bell rang out one last time, its sound echoing through the night as Westbrook High was reduced to rubble. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. And then, slowly, Emma and Adam looked at each other, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. "It's over," Adam whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. "We did it." Emma nodded, though her heart was still pounding in her chest. "The school is gone. The nightmare is over." But even as they lay there, exhausted and shaken, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching them, that the final battle was still ahead. The final bell had rung, but the story wasn't over. You've just heard the final bell ring with me, the Tales Keeper, here on Nightmare for Giggles. But remember, the story is far from over. Emma and Adam may have escaped the collapsing school, but the darkness that haunted Westbrook High isn't finished with them yet. The final battle is coming, and the stakes have never been higher. If you're ready to face the ultimate challenge and uncover the truth behind Westbrook High's haunted halls, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And until next time, remember, some battles are fought not just with strength, but with the will to survive.